Joachim Kroll, the Rhur Cannibal, terrorized West Germany for over 20 years, eating the flesh of his victims because he says meat was too expensive. While not nearly as well known as Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer, Joachim Kroll's crimes are equally, and if not more, disturbing. Known as the Ruhr Cannibal or the Duisburg Man-Eater, Kroll's horrid killing spree took the lives of 14 known victims, and authorities are certain he killed more. Without any further ado, let's get into the gruesome story of the Rhur Cannibal. Kroll was born in 1933 during the beginning of the Nazi Party's rise in Germany. He was the youngest of 8 children and definitely more on the petite side. Reports say throughout his childhood, Kroll was always tormented for being weak. This constant humiliation from his family and friends, coupled with an unstable upbringing during the World War II, likely contributed to the sickly 20-year-long killing spree. It's worth mentioning, Kroll was a frequent bedwetter as a child, which caused him a lot of embarrassment. It's been noted that he reportedly sexually abused animals throughout his childhood. Both bedwetting and animal cruelty are components of the McDonald triad, a set of childhood behaviours that can point to violent tendencies in later life. So it's safe to say it's all looking downhill from here. Like many other families in Germany during World War II, Kroll's family suffered from extreme poverty and hunger. His father, a soldier in the German army, was taken as a prisoner of war by the Russian army and is believed to have died during that time, leaving Kroll and his 7 siblings with their mother. Shortly after this, in 1948, Kroll quit school after severely underperforming on his grades. To cut him some slack, his struggles in school were likely a result of disruptions of World War II and the passing of his father, but later in life, testing revealed that he had an IQ of 78, and some reports claim Kroll didn't even know how to read. So after leaving school thick as a brick, Kroll started working as a farm worker and soon developed his appetite for murder. While working on the farm, Kroll was finally exposed to his morbid fantasies. It all started because he had witnessed someone slaughtering pigs and he had become sexually aroused by the sight of their blood. This sexual obsession with violence meant that he was unable to maintain an erection under normal circumstances, and he struggled to have relationships with women. When he saw the pig being slaughtered, the incident, as he says, awakened his sex drive. As a young man, Kroll did attempt to have a romantic relationship with an unknown woman. He said that he felt awkward and inadequate with the woman sexually and described his only sexual encounter with a woman as a failure. Instead of just finding the more fish in the sea that everyone talks about, Kroll's twisted mind concluded that he should have sexual encounters with someone who could not complain about his performance. In 1955, as his obsession with death grew, Kroll's mother died. The Kroll siblings went their separate ways and lost touch. This was the last straw for Joachim, and so later that year, he murdered his first victim. On February 8th, 1955, Kroll travelled to the village of Wildstedt. There was a young 19-year-old woman named Irmgard Sturl. She was walking on a quiet street when Kroll caught her by surprise and captured her. He then dragged her to a nearby barn and strangled her to death. He then proceeded to rape her and slashed open her stomach. After raping and mutilating his victims after their death, Kroll also reportedly masturbated over their bodies. Finally, when he got home from a kill, he would pleasure himself again with a rubber sex doll, often while choking a small child doll. These horrifying acts became signature aspects of his future killings. Kroll would later claim after his first killing, his murderous tendencies dwindled until 4 years later, but authorities believe that Kroll was responsible for several more murders between 1955 and 1959, which is when Kroll claimed he started killing again. His next known murder took place on June 16th, 1959, when 24-year-old Clara Frieda Tesma was killed in a place called Rhine at an abandoned barn. Tesma's murder was identical to Irmgard Sturl's, only this time Kroll began to engage in what would become his trademark cannibalism. Kroll removed pieces of Tesma's flesh from her buttocks and thighs, wrapped them up and took them home to eat. A local man in Rhine named Heinrich Ott, heartbreakingly, was arrested for Tesma's murder and hung himself in prison. Meanwhile, Joachim Kroll remained at large. It's been noted that Joachim Kroll's psychology documents say that his self-awareness and methodical ways of selecting victims prove him to have a higher IQ than his reported score of 78. Like many other serial killers, Kroll travelled to different towns to look for his victims. Kroll mainly murdered women and young girls, but he didn't have any particular preference on age or looks, like other killers often do. He even murdered a man once, named Hermann Schmitz, in 1965. That night, Kroll had travelled to Gruesome, where he found Schmitz and his fiancée Marion Wien in a secluded area having fun in the front seat of a car, and that sight sparked an idea from Kroll. He lured the man out of the car by waving his arms as if he needed help. Then he stabbed Schmitz repeatedly and planned to kill and his fiancée next. Instead, Wien leaped into the driver's seat of the car and drove directly at Kroll, who jumped out of the way just in time and ran away. Although she got a good look at Kroll, Wien's account of the nondescript killer didn't turn up any leads, and Kroll remained free to carry out his horrifying crimes. Further confusing police, Kroll didn't always strip his victims' flesh to engage in cannibalism, making each murder different. Chillingly, he preferred to take cuts from victims that he saw as particularly young and tender. Other operating killers in West Germany also had police occupied. In the years before Joachim Kroll began killing, Werner Boost had been murdering couples in the area starting in the early 50s. Boost and several other suspected killers are believed to have thrown police off Kroll as a suspect. While Kroll was actively killing, 5 other men, along with Heinrich Ott, were arrested and charged for his murders. Like Heinrich, one other of these men had committed suicide after being wrongly accused. Another disturbing element of Kroll's murders was the motivation behind the cannibalism. Kroll had a rather strange practical view of the act. He later said that he took pieces of flesh from his victims because meat was expensive. According to him, he had cannibalized victims in order to save money, as meat was of short supply and consequently expensive. Regardless of the price or availability of meat, it's more likely that Kroll cannibalized his victims because he found it sexually satisfying, not because it was the only practical solution he could think of to cope with food shortages. Either way, Joachim Kroll's cannibalistic crime spree came to an end on July 3rd, 1976. That day, Kroll kidnapped 4-year-old girl Marion Kettner from a park. A little later, a neighbour asked Kroll if he knew what was blocking the pipes in the building's shared lavatory. Kroll, as honest as could be, replied guts. Not taking him seriously, the neighbour chuckled, but once the neighbour looked in the toilet and saw tiny human organs, he immediately contacted the police. During that time, Police were asking questions door to door about the missing child, so when they received the call about the child's organs found in a block of flats and Kroll's awareness of this, detectives went calling on Kroll almost immediately. Once inside Kroll's apartment, police found Marion Kettner's dismembered body. Parts of the body were in the refrigerator, a hand was cooking on the stove, and the guts were clogged in the plumbing. Police removed the shared toilet and found Kettner's liver, lungs, kidney, and heart. Kroll was immediately arrested, where he admitted to murdering Kettner and gave police details of 13 other murders. He also confessed to eating parts of his victims. While in prison, Kroll eagerly cooperated with the police, convinced that he would be given an operation that would cure his homicidal urges and released. Although he was arrested on July 3rd, 1976, Kroll didn't stand trial until 1982. While he admitted to murdering one man and 13 women and girls, at the end of his 151-day trial, Kroll was only convicted of 9 murders. He was sentenced to life in prison, which was a shock for Kroll, as he said one of the main reasons he confessed to the killings was because he thought that authorities would get him the help he needed to stop killing people. In Kroll's mind, after he was given the treatment for his murderous impulses, he would be released back into society to continue living his life as a reformed man. So I'm just going to state his IQ is definitely 78 or lower, which wouldn't matter anyway, because less than a decade after he was given a life sentence for his grisly murders, 58-year-old Kroll died in prison of a heart attack on July 1st, 1991. And that was the end of Joachim Kroll. That wraps up today's story. I hope this was enough for your daily dose of weird and disgusting. The first person to answer this joke correctly gets a free true crime hoodie. The joke is, what is a cannibal's favourite restaurant? Like the video and subscribe to the channel to be eligible, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.